All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Joe Parlett, and I'm a co-founder of FeatureWave, which is an AI-powered sales co-pilot, which runs in Salesforce. But today, we're not here to talk about FeatureWave. Today, we're going to talk about POC workshops. We're doing a series of podcasts or fireside chats where we bring in various experts in their craft to talk about different elements, typically of sales and revenue enablement. And today I'm joined by my friend and colleague of 10, 12 years, Robert Garcia, who is truly a POC transformation workshop savant, I will say. I've participated in many of his workshops where he helps companies determine their path. So a company might be considering making a change. Technology may be involved. And there's a lot that goes into that. They've got to very accurately and thoroughly understand their current situation. And Robert's great at helping them understand that. So understand their current situation, the adjustments or improvements they're considering making, and make sure that they look at things comprehensively. And then understanding what the potential outcomes are. We know we've got some pain. We're considering making these changes. If we do, what can we expect the improvements or the outcomes to be for the company, for this project, and for the company? And Robert is truly an expert at doing that. His background is the perfect blend of consulting and enterprise software. Robert and I met, as I mentioned, 10 or 12 years ago. I was at Aptus working on a project for a company called McKesson. Robert was with a consulting firm that ultimately ended up implementing Aptus. And Robert was a big part of that project and its success. And then soon after, Robert joined Aptus, and I had the pleasure of working with Robert for many years at Aptus, where I got to observe how he would help customers along this transformation journey. So that's what we'll talk about today. And real quick, to subscribe to this series of conversations and podcasts, please click the link below, featurewave.io. Thank you. Robert, great to see you.
Let's do it.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here. When you brought up this topic, I thought it was really interesting because I've seen how some of these activities, these workshops have actually become more effective in creating differentiation for software firms in particular, where a lot of times these solution evaluations, these planning sessions, these discovery workshops, these POC planning activities, and they should be planned effectively, create an opportunity, if done well, to really get a handle on how is a solution like to live with, and also how can the vendor create differentiation in a world where it's very difficult to do that, given how similar so many software solutions look, feel, sound. They're marketed the same. They've got the same product marketers writing the content. They've got the same LinkedIn presence and all the demand gen stuff. And then the RFPs are written in a way where even, when I was doing evaluations as an SI, we kind of designed them a certain way, but it becomes really hard when you look at the Gartner chart or you look at the Forrester wave and you see the scatter plot and it's got like 2, maybe 3 dimensions, right? It's like, how big is a circle or where is it placed on there? And it's, you guess it's but what is it going to mean for me? And how can I create a better understanding of, this 2-dimensional black and white chart scatter plot? Like you zoom out and you wonder, are these all the same thing? Like, am I looking at it from like the wrong number of thousands of feet? And when I look at these box checking exercises that, when we get into these conversations, like I want to do a workshop to understand, I want to do a live demo, I want to do a POC, I want to do a pilot, I want to get my hands on it. And we'd be thinking, oh my God, here we go. Like, I'm going to have to go and grab like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 resources. We're going to have to plan this thing out. We're going to go on site and it's going to get awkward, and it's going to make us nervous, right? And a lot of times, nowadays, there's a few things that we can really do to use the evaluation to our advantage, both to the buyer's advantage and then also to the seller's advantage. I think this is an opportunity to showcase the approach, the company, everything that's intangible about the product, because I think now that we've exited that weird time of the last few years where we only get 25 minutes or 55 minutes, depending on how your day is constructed, and everything lived and died by that Zoom window.
Yeah.
Right. Or that 40-minute free version. More and more we're seeing these hybrid workshops, right, where we are seeing more in-depth activities, and there's a chance, especially now that there's more scrutiny on investment, cost of capital are up, and fighting for above the fold funding of projects continues.
Yeah. And to one of your points, these workshops are an opportunity when there is so much congestion in the marketplace, and so many of the vendors and consulting firms look and sound the same. Really, these workshops end up being an opportunity for the vendors to build trust, or show that they can't be trusted to make the customer successful, because ultimately that's what they're looking for. Obviously, who is going to make me successful in this project, and who do I trust to do that? And these workshops are a great opportunity for you to prove that to the customer. So I feel like they should be embraced by the selling team rather than participation with reluctance. It's a great opportunity, and if you don't take advantage of it, there's a good chance that you're not going to end up getting this deal with this customer or being a partner of this company.
Yeah, I mean, what if you could get the full attention of a customer? It's so hard to get it, right? And a lot of times when you think about it, it'll typically originate as a request from the evaluator, right? Hey, we want to do a pilot, or we want to do some implementation scoping, or we want to plan out our requirements, we want to design a process, whatever the occasion is. And what we should do is take that as the biggest opportunity for us to gain access to more stakeholders, right? Let's compound that ask. Hey, we want to do that workshop, but we also want to get operations involved. We want to get the sales leadership involved. We want to get all these things, all these different folks, because this is something that's going to affect them. It's going to be something that's either going to make their life a nightmare, or it's going to make it much better. It's going to allow them to hire more, or it's going to allow them to scale more effectively, or forecast more effectively, whatever the value prop is of the software or the solution. And now's a chance where you can actually get their full attention, where they're not multitasking second, third, fourth monitor, their phone, and you can actually do it in a actual working session. It becomes so much more valuable, and I think you have to take advantage of that. And it's the best opportunity for us to get multi-threaded in accounts, where most of the time we're locked behind one stakeholder, one firewall, one independent procurement officer, right? That part is it's almost like the cheat code to getting access to other folks that you wouldn't normally get access to. Right? Sometimes it's, can we also invite the authors of the RFP, right? Can we get the folks who put in the requirements and understand the subtext and why their voice is written in a certain way? And during COVID, it was really hard because we'd have to read these requirements, try and figure out, the requirements are probably written this way because they have this pain, or they have this issue. Why do they have so many questions around, what I think of as usability quirks, right? Probably because their legacy system has horrendous adoption, where the heavy users, they love it, the admins love it. Look at our favorite software company, right? At Dreamforce, you find all the admins with the Kool-Aid, and they're dressing up as the park ranger, and they're doing the Kool-Aid. But the casual user, it's like, I don't want to go into Salesforce, right? Like, I hate it, right? Because, the UI hasn't changed in so many years. But, a lot of times we get access to those other secondary, tertiary user bases that are going to help you either get it sold or get it adopted, get it renewed, right? So, this is revenue enablement. It's got to be something that stays sticky in an account. And especially these days, SaaS shelf life is short.
Yep.
Stakeholder half-life is short.
Yep.
Sales leadership is even shorter.
Yep.
Right? I mean, we've gone through a few organizations where they churn through CROs on both sides, customer and vendor. So it's tough.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, these workshops are definitely an opportunity where you've got a captive audience, and it's a great opportunity to help lead them, help them identify some challenges maybe they weren't even aware of, opportunities to make improvements in areas that they weren't thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
And so you talked about bringing in a lot of groups. How do you help the customer to make sure that they've got the right level of participation and that you've gone wide enough and high enough in the organization? How do you make that determination? And how do you ensure that you get that type of cooperation?
Mm-hmm. I mean, part of it depends on the model of what it is that you provide from a solution perspective, right? I think a lot of it is sometimes it's all about the front line, right? Where we have to get the front line first, second level managers bought in, right? Because this is going to be a large scale deployment, and it's going to involve seats, and it's going to involve rollouts, and it's going to involve all of that usability.
Yeah.
And then other times it's around access to groups that can help make this a better and more confident buying decision, right? Sometimes it could be access to operations, it could be access to finance, right? When we talk about how often this is an issue or pain point, what does that result in? Who suffers, right? What are the potential pitfalls and payouts and consequences, right? We're always taught about that, of something that we could actually dollarize, right? What are the penalties and obligations of if this isn't met, right? Is it turnover and we have to have the cost of having to onboard a new SDR team, right? Because of the strategy failed for that, or it could be something entirely different. So I think that approach will help dictate how I want to go in terms of the high and wide for getting invitation. And sometimes it doesn't have to be for the entirety of the whole series, right? Sometimes it could be just for the kickoff. I think we've gone on site where we do that first 45 minutes, right? And we have the why we're here. We're going to design a process, or we're going to design requirements, or we're going to test out a feature, or we're going to pilot a solution. But even just asking, hey, can we get a frontline stakeholder, or can we get an executive sponsor to come in and share a few words on why this evaluation is so impactful for them?
Yeah. And
that invitation at the beginning is usually an invitation also at the end for the readout, right?
Yeah.
Say, hey, you helped kick this off, Mr. or Mrs. Sales leader, or operations leader, or legal leader, or finance leader, and then bring them also back in for the readout, right? That's your excuse.
Yep. Yeah, there's benefit, so much benefit on both sides. And like you're saying, you can have you put together an agenda. Here's what we're gonna cover today, or today and tomorrow and the next day. I've seen these workshops go on for multiple days or even a week, where there are different groups and they know when they need to attend, how long they need to attend for, but definitely getting stakeholder participation so that they understand what's going on, the magnitude of the issue, the benefit of solving the problem, the outcomes they can expect. Then they're going to endorse this. But it really helps them to qualify and quantify if and how we're going to tackle this. So we're in a congested space. We're now getting together. You don't have to do these workshops over Zoom anymore. Are you back full speed? Because we're in a congested space. So like we talked about, this is an opportunity to create some distance between you and the rest of the pack, for the technology vendor or the consulting firm. Are you back full swing? Are you doing these workshops like you were in 2019 and earlier?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes it's taking on a little bit of a hybrid form where we're creating some new activities and new exercises to include folks who are there, folks who aren't there. And we found there's a few tricks to that, right? Part of it is like a live polling or using breakouts. and also just having certain slots that we can remain flexible around.
Yep.
Even when we were in person, we'd always have stuff like, the plane didn't make it, or one team couldn't attend, or there was a fire drill. One time we were on site and they had a spin-off announcement of the entire division, right, where our workshop was interrupted for a few hours.
Gotta put the brakes on.
So there's always these weird things that can happen, but I think what we've done is created micro exercises for pretty much everything. Some of them are in the true kind of sales spirit, some of them are more gamified, some of them are more quiz based, but I think having the right combination of a bag of tricks, so to speak, helps you have these different things. And to be honest, some of them were ones that we created or invented at conferences, right? Because a lot of times we sourced some of these from what we would do in some of these roundtables and birds of a feather type discussions. I remember we would do these metrics exercises or these benefits exercises or these prioritization schemes where we'd create a way where more than one person can vote or participate in contributing to how we choose the things that are going to be most impactful for us, because not all priorities are equal, not all capabilities and requirements are equal. And I think for a long time, we used to do these activities based off of technical dependency. This feature has to be deployed, then this feature has to be deployed, but then the integration has to be there and the data has to be clean. So that has to happen first. And there was always like these phase zeros and the phase ones. And I think modern software has started to move away from some of that. I'd say with a lot of the technologies that they bring to bear, where designing those SOWs and projects around functional rollouts that are logically streamed in order to cache, or whatever it is, that doesn't always happen anymore,
right?
As I'm finding where the stomach to do that type of long scale big four transformation, it's just not happening where the majority of transactions are happening, at least in my experience of the last few years.
Yep. But certainly I think it is to the benefit of the customer for them to request these workshops and these proofs of concept, because again, it's going to give them another set of eyes or multiple sets of eyes to examine their challenges through these different lenses, and they might get thoughts and insights that they wouldn't have realized if they weren't doing the workshop. So I definitely feel there were days where it was with reluctance. Oh my gosh, we've got to do this week-long workshop. But there's so much value for both sides, for the customer to figure out what they should do, for the vendor to build alignment and prove whether or not they've got something that solves these challenges that the customer is having.
I think in some ways it becomes the most effective week that you'll get in these, 30 some odd week deal cycles. Where you could do or undo in 1 week an entire deal cycle's worth of critical mass or goodwill or negative will, right? Depending on who you bring to that and all the different intangibles around all the things that support that POC, right? The planning, the effective summary of that, the readout of how it happened from a debrief perspective. And I think that stuff, if you can codify, you could really help execute at scale. So I think one of the things that was also difficult back in the day was we couldn't afford to do many of those, right? We'd have to pick and choose where we're going to actually have the team go, right? And at one point, I think we were like 7 of us, right? We would do the workshops, right? It would be a few folks to help co-facilitate it, the sales team. It would include technical folks, the sales engineers. It would include services consultants. It could involve product folks. It could involve kind of the general 1 or 2 MCs, right? We had Mark and Laura and Derek, and I've got the experience that says these types of things can only be scaled if you start to run a certain playbook around that, right? And part of that playbook is having a structured formula for the prep, the actual activities themselves, and then the debrief. And you can turn that into a templated activity, then it becomes a little bit more turnkey. We've even dabbled in charging for something like that. And then you also look at it from the ownership perspective of where does the SI fit into some of these activities? And that's always a hard question, because sometimes I find that the third parties are taking a backseat as observers, and
Right.
other times they are adding value. And,
Yep.
and it does depend on the vendor and what your SI go-to-market plan is. But that could also be a significant wrench into whether the customer sees value in
Right.
that third leg,
Yep.
or if they don't see value and
Yeah.
they're simply seen as, force multipliers, or they're just seen as the billable resources to get it done, right? I mean, there are times where we would do workshops with the smaller SIs, right? And
Yep.
they would bring someone who has tremendous value, right?
Right.
Whether they're more of a domain expert, like we've seen in a few different consultancies,
Yep.
or as an implementation expert, but that's got a lot of best practices and they're really challenged. So depending on what that strategy is, having them as also part of the design and execution of those activities could be a significant player of, hey, that combination of the vendor plus the partner, when I saw them working together with us in that workshop,
Yep.
we all felt like we're on the same team.
Yep.
and it came across really well as a way of that working model, because in some ways it's like a preview of what that working model is going to look like. Other times it's like, I have no idea why these three parties are in the room together, because they all hate each other.
Right.
and it's terrible, right? I mean, you and I had a big project where I was the third party, you were the prime, and there was some PS involved, right?
Yeah.
And then there was the customer, and they had their own internal team, and that was a significant cost as well, right? They had their own
Yep.
administrator. And I think some ways the POC is a preview of what's that working relationship going to be like between the three parties.
Yeah. Can any of us stomach it?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm a huge proponent for them, for these workshops, and the investment of time by all parties. I think it's well worth it. A lot of times these enterprise evaluation cycles can drag on for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And I don't think it takes a company that long to figure out what to do. But a lot of times they're distracted. These projects come in and out of priority.
Mhm.
But I think that these workshops could really help to concentrate things and accelerate the evaluation process.
Mhm.
And help them in a concentrated manner. In 1 week, we're going to figure out, is this worthwhile? Is the pain that acute and the solution that fulfilling, and the outcome worthwhile? Should we do this? And I think these workshops really help all parties, because they don't want to be dragged through a 6-month, 12-month evaluation. The vendors, it's not an ideal scenario either. And I think these workshops help accelerate that.
Mhm. You're going to find the best sound bites, the best awkward moments, the furrowed brows, and just the exclamations that you'll get from the participants as to positive reactions, negative reactions. And a wise observer would take note of some of these, because these are some of the things that become that basis for the argument in the close, right?
Yep.
I think those are some of the most memorable things. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for good and bad, I mean, I remember there was one that we were doing around a business case, and we were sitting with a CFO, and effectively they, in not as many words, said, I don't care if this creates an efficiency or gain or not. They're paid salary, they'll work on the weekends, the process will work, we'll just add more headcount. And sometimes you find out then and there that this is something that the CFO is never going to sign.
Right.
Yeah. Or other times you find out that everybody agrees that this is a problem, and everybody simply thought that the other department was going to take the lead on that.
Right.
And as long as we get agreement that, okay, we're ready to take the lead, we just need to name the department, and then assign the RACI matrix and get everybody to agree on it. That was the last thing that we needed to get the consensus.
Yeah.
And that was obviously a good example, but I think those are the forcing functions that do make a difference in these pursuit cycles, where it is otherwise a non-human, in some ways, evaluation of the different solutions.
Yeah. And it can be very difficult, especially these days with the distributed teams.
Yeah.
Part of the reason it takes 6, 12 months, 18 months to do these evaluations, you can't get people's time. Typically, evaluating enterprise software is not the 6 people, the 8 people on the team's primary job or responsibility at their company. So nor is it the primary job of the ancillary teams either. So it's difficult to get their time and have them prioritize this and have these evaluations go quickly. So I think these workshops definitely help accelerate that and concentrate the amount of time.
And that's why I think if you have the right stakeholder there, we had one where we would walk in and we would agree for at least that first 2-hour working session. The laptops were left with the lids closed, right? Phones were upside down, and we were able to at least agree on a process prioritization. And you usually have to find someone really strong on the customer side to help you enforce that. But it's very rare that you'll get that kind of undivided attention. Other than these forcing functions of these workshops.
So these transformation workshops are very worthwhile. Vendors should embrace them. The customer should endorse them and have it as part of their evaluation process as well. Go high and wide, right? In the teams, getting as many involved as you can. What other tips would you have for companies that are considering running these kinds of workshops? I mean, one tip that I have is have somebody like Robert involved who can really help you determine current state, better state, and what to expect if we make these adjustments. Robert is a supreme specialist at that type of role. So I would encourage you to find somebody on your team or outside of the company that can help you. But what other tips do you have? Do the workshop. Vendors embrace the workshop and participate. Go far and wide, go high with the evaluation team. Make sure you're involving all the ancillary teams. You don't want somebody holding up their hand at the end and say, hey, how come nobody talked to me about this? What about my needs for this project or this solution? What other tips do you have?
Probably finding a theme and making it memorable are also really key. I think that whenever we've done these where we're able to match it to a type of initiative and pair it up with something that is compatible at least with what the broader organization is doing, whether it's initiatives sponsored by the PMO or something that's tied to something that's on the leadership's emphasis. So whether it's a focus of the quarter or it's something around execution, a lot of times the top level sponsor will have some type of core themes for the fiscal year. It could be something that was set at kickoff. Go back and work with the stakeholder to find, was there something that was in the earnings call? Was there something that we can trace back to when we had the theme of our QBR even, right? And we said, hey, we all agreed that we have to get better at this. This is a chance for the workshop to also consider how we can align us as an organization to do better at that, whether it's data, whether it's tools, whether it's process, or the other elements there. Tying it to that and making it part of their own undercurrent is a way to do that. And it also helps if you can do anything you can to make it memorable, right? I think these are the best chance for you to create an event that folks will remember, and also to ask them up front, right? What do you like and not like about POC evaluations or workshops? And then if you could do it differently, what would you do? Do that as part of the design process for this activity to make it for them, because organizations are so different. And a lot of times you want to find what's a way where I can make something compatible with the way that this business works.
Definitely.
Some more forward thinking, and then some others they just want to get the basics and they just want to get it adopted, and they want to focus on simplicity and usability and all that. And others are going to be around, hey, we've got to take the next leap, or we've got to have one foot in the future. And we're a company that has staked on innovation. We want to be on your cab. We want to be pushing the use cases forward. And there's also that type of customer as well. Yep.
Makes sense. So tie these workshops to critical company initiatives, and you'll go further. And then these are obviously super helpful when it comes to validating this plan that you're contemplating, that you're trying to put together and ultimately getting it approved. So it doesn't sit on the shelf
Mhm,
as another idea that didn't get passed.
mhm.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, all right, buddy. Well,
Nice.
thank you. Appreciate your time. Great to
Yeah.
see you.
Absolutely. We'll do something again soon.
We will. Thank you, folks.